Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to lesson number 3. In this lesson, we continue to develop our understanding of the verbal sentence. In the previous lessons, we focused on al-madi, the perfect tense verb or an action that has been completed. In this lesson, we're going to look at the other component of the verbal sentence, which is the doer. And as you know from the introduction, there are two types of doer. One that is inside the verb, the pronoun, and then we can also have an external noun. So you're going to understand all you need to know about it in this lesson, inshallah ta'ala. Then we will add on to that knowledge the difference between jumla ismiya and jumla fi'liya. This area causes a lot of confusion when you jump into the lessons. What are the difference between the two? How do I translate them correctly? Or how do I understand and recognize them correctly? So inshallah, we'll spend a few minutes looking at that. And then we'll look at the madi. Sometimes it is also used to express an action that will be done in the future, how that is done. And of course, we will conclude with some examples from Quranic text and some hadith looking at the examples of verbal sentences, inshallah. So we have a lot to cover. Again, let us begin with the blessed name of Allah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Seeking His divine help and His mercy and His forgiveness. Making dua. Rabbi zidni ilma. O my Lord, increase me in knowledge. In the introductory session, we mentioned that the verbal sentences has a number of components. Most important, of course, is the verb that the sentence begins with. Then we have the doer of the verb. And then we have, if required, we have an object. And there are many other components of the verbal sentence. And inshallah ta'ala, you're going to become familiar with all of these and plus more. And of course, some of the parts we've already studied. So this lesson, we are focusing on the doer, which is the al-fa'ilu, the doer of the verbal sentence, how to recognize it, and more important, how to translate it correctly. And also, if you recall, I did share this slide with you at the beginning in the mapping session where I mapped out the three big parts, or at least the first two, and we're looking at al-fa'il. And of course, you know that there are three types of verbs. We are starting with the madi. So for example, here, ذهب حامد إلى المسجد. So Hamid went, and of course you can tell from the English that this is past tense. And if you note from the previous lesson, you know that of course this is al-madi. And then we have يذهب حامد إلى المسجد. So again, you got here Hamid goes to the mosque. And then if I want to tell somebody to go to the mosque, it will be اذهب إلى المسجد. And again, you can see, and this one, of course, we're going to learn later. So these two we will cover later. Please note, when I shared this slide in the introductory session, there was a spelling error on dhahaba. And jazakumullah khairan for the brother who pointed this out to me. It was a slip of the mind, I didn't check it properly. Therefore, it got through, but I haven't got the time to redo that video. In the inshallah, in the future, when I do, I will correct it. But please note that just in case that has bothered you, I do apologize sincerely for it. Human beings, no matter how hard we try, we're still prone to making mistakes. So anyhow, these are the three verbs. We are, of course, using the madi, the past tense, the perfect tense, this one in this lesson. But the rules that we are learning will apply equally to al-mudari also. So this lesson is about the fa'il or al-fa'ilu, the doer. And there are two types of doer, again, from the introduction, One is the doer is a pronoun. So the pronoun, and we're going to call this one internal doer. Rafa pronoun. We don't have to say that, but internal doer will be fine. Internal doer pronoun will also be fine, but I'll explain to you why it is rafa. So here we have they helped Zaid. So the subject in English is they, but in Arabic, they is here within the verb itself. There is no separate word for they. So nasaru Zaidan. Again, nasaru you should recognize from the previous lesson. And then we have nasarat and we have Maryamu, which you can see here. So here the pronoun is not the doer in English. We translate Maryam. Maryam helped Zaid. So the doer is Maryam. And we're going to understand this aspect of it. And it's a very important lesson. It causes a lot of confusion for English-speaking students. I myself struggled a lot at the beginning. But inshallah, I'm hoping this approach will avoid the standard confusion and errors that can occur in our understanding if we don't approach it in a systematic way. So we're going to look at the two types of doer, either the pronoun or the noun coming after the verb, which expresses the doer of the action mentioned in the verb. So this is what this lesson is primarily about. On the screen, we have the English structure on this side. English, of course, stating the obvious goes this way, Arabic goes that way. So in English, the subject comes first and the rest is predicate. So this part is your predicate. Predicate can have lots of things, but in English, generally, the noun will come first, or the thing that is introduced as the subject comes first, and the rest of it is just information. There are rare occasions in English you can have, for example, in questioning words, if I ask you, are you a Muslim? And that AR is not your noun. It is technically a verb in English, but these are very rare. Mostly this is the structure. So you have a subject, verb, and object. So the translation is Hamid heard the Qur'an, for example, of this sentence. So heard the Qur'an is our predicate, and then thus far, the first part is the subject. We've done that in the previous lessons in book 1. However, when we have in Arabic, I can have both ways. I can have the verb coming first. So sami'a means he heard. And again, you've seen the scale already. You should be able to recognize fa'ila. I think I did alima in the previous lesson. So you exactly the same. The middle root letter taking a kasra. So this is your verb. The verb comes first. Then we have our doer. Of course, we can have it now in Arabic. The doer and the object can be moved around. It will not really affect the sentence meaning. But in this case, I put the doer straight after. So then we have our doer, and then we have our object, which is, I'll put as number 2. So this is the order of the verbal sentence, the standard verbal sentence in Arabic. Now, even though the sentences began with a verb in Arabic, when I translate into English, I will always translate the doer first, the subject first. And it is for this reason, even though some books will call the fa'il as the subject, I will not call it that, because that is where the confusion comes. So with verbal sentence, we will say fa'il, that is the classical Arabic way of doing it. With nominal sentence, we will call it mubtada, which is the subject. So if you can just get your head around that, inshallah ta'ala, you'll understand the difference between the two. So in verbal sentence, the verb comes first, and then we have a doer. The doer can be in the verb itself, or it can come afterwards as an external noun, which is the doer. And that is the major point, inshallah. If you get that, the rest will be easy. So I put the notes at the top that Jumla Fi'liya begins with the verb. It has 2 key components. Number 1, the verb. Number 2, the doer. And of course, it can contain lots of other things in more complex or varied sentences. English sentence do not begin with verbs. Arabic sentence can begin with an ismun or a fa'ilun, both. We've seen that ismun version in some detail in book 1. But the subject in the Jumla Ismiya, we call it mubtada, and of course the predicate is called khabar. In Jumla Fi'liya, even though in English it will be still called subject, we are going to call it the fa'il, which is a classical Arabic way of doing it. In the Arabic grammar books, you'll find it the doer. And this will remove, inshallah ta'ala, a lot of the confusion. So when you translate into English, and this is the crux of the matter, when you translate into English, irrespective of whether it is the Jumla Ismiya or Jumla Fi'liya, you will have no choice, except for rare occasions, but to put the fa'il first in a Jumla Fi'liya. Of course, in the mubtada and the khabar scenario, Jumla Ismiya, it will be the same. But you will have to put, like I had to do here, I couldn't say heard the Qur'an Hamid. That wouldn't make sense in English. I couldn't have said heard Hamid the Qur'an. Again, that is not really correct. So here I'm translating with the subject first. And this is the point, inshallah, why I wanted to highlight this very important point, and we will not avoid confusion. So first thing you do is identify the type of sentence this is, whether it's Jumla Ismiya, Jumla Fi'liya. And again, the hint is Jumla Ismiya begins with an ismun, Jumla Fi'liya begins with a fa'ilun or a verb. Once you've identified the verb, then you identify the doer, and if there are other things, objects, etc., you can identify those. But this is the most important 2 points that you need to note when understanding the difference between Jumla Ismiya and Jumla Fi'liya. So on the screen, I've got some random words just to show you how this works. In English, we're going this way again. So we have the doer first. Okay, I'm calling it doer from now on so that to avoid confusion. We have the doer first, which is, of course, technically is the subject. The doer can be he, she, it, they, you, we, etc., a pronoun. Or it can be a noun, any kind of noun in English. For example, Hamid, Maryam, the boy, the bird, anything. So a thing, an entity, a person or an entity doing the action or has done the action. And then you have the verb. So, for example, he went, she slept, I came, you came, we ate, Hamid ate, Maryam came, etc., etc. So you put your verb then, and then whatever else you want to put in. So this is the structure. So the doer in English can also, we could technically say, be a pronoun, and there are many different types of pronoun. And of course, it could also be a noun. Noun meaning a name of a thing, a person, an entity. Then the verb comes. In Arabic, this is also exactly identical except for the ordering. So what we have is two types of doer. The doer can be a pronoun. Like, for example, here, Nasaru Zaidan. They helped Zaid. Of course, the word they is coming first, even though I got the verb first in the Arabic language. Or it can be a declared noun that is coming after, and you can see here Maryam. So Nasarat, technically speaking, she helped. Maryamu, and here is your doer, Maryamu Zaidan. How do I know Maryamu is my doer? Again, this has been explained in book 1 in detail. It is rafa. The doer is always rafa. And that is the two main categories of the types of ism or asma that can be used in verbal sentences as the doer of the verb, be it the madi, mudare, etc. So point to note here, either it is be a pronoun or a noun that is representing, of course, a person, a being, a thing, etc., who has done the action or is doing the action or will do the action. So this is what I mean by the doer. Doer is the person or the being or entity, a person, a thing, whatever it is, a noun or a pronoun doing the action. And in Arabic, we'll have two types, either the pronoun or the noun. So this should be familiar with you now because this is from the previous lesson. So here we have two options. And again, I want to just explain why I'm using this terminology so we will not get confused. The doer in Arabic is always rafa. The doer in Arabic is always rafa. Remember book 1 where I went through this in detail, where I mentioned the different reasons why an ism is rafa. So far, if you're following this lessons in series, you have the subject is always rafa, mubtada. Khabar is always rafa, and this is the identification. Of course, there are other things which are rafa. And the third thing that you've learned, which is rafa, is the doer of the verb. If you remember, ja'a rajulun, who came? A man came. Or ja'al imamu, who came? The imam came. So it has to be rafa. Now, the doer can be two things, and the first one I'm going to call is the internal pronoun, okay, which has to be rafa. So the internal pronoun that's embedded within every verb, which we did very slowly and in detail in the previous lesson, could be our one type of doer. Or it could be an external doer, which is the noun that comes after the verb. And that's exactly what we mean. So going back to our previous lesson, all of these, the doers that are there, which again, I'm not going to go through all of them. If you missed the lesson, please go back. I've explained this in detail. So all of them are the doer. And hence, because they're a pronoun, they're an ism, they have the four properties. And their property or i'rab is that they are rafa. So that is why I'm calling it internal doer pronoun. In brackets, you can put rafa pronoun. So it is an internal doer, which is the pronoun. You do not need a separate pronoun in Arabic. It's embedded within the verb, and it is rafa. And the noun that comes after the verb, if it is rafa, then it is the doer of the verb. But it can only come after number 1 and number 4. And again, I'll explain that in a little bit more detail. So let's take a look at the internal doer rafa pronoun. The internal doer pronoun mentioned in the previous lesson in detail can be of two types. Either it is mustatir, and again, I'm sure you can now recall that I went through this in detail. So it either be number 1 or number 4. Why is it called mustatir? Because there is nothing there in the scale of the verb that has an indication that it is the doer. In all the others, you will see there are some letters which represent the pronoun, and therefore it is the rafa pronoun. That is the first point. So they're called mustatir. So in the Madi, number 1 and number 4, and that's why I've colored it black as well, but because another reason, I'll explain that shortly. But the rest of them are called bariz, which means the pronoun is visible. You can see it. There is something there that indicates the doer pronoun. And of course, all of them are mentioned on this slide, and it has been mentioned in the previous lesson in detail. So these are the two types: mustatir, hidden, or bariz, a pronoun which is visible in the scale of the verb. So when you're asked who is the doer, you can, for example, with number 7, you will say ta is my doer, anta, representing anta. If you were asked in number 4, for example, who is the doer, you will say hiya, which is mustatir. The ta is indicating that it is feminine. Number 1, you will say the doer is mustatir, representing huwa. And that's all you need to remember, inshallah ta'ala. So if you want to express the sentence with a pronoun, you don't need anything else. You will use one of the 14, whichever pronoun you want to say. So you want to say he, she, they, you, we, you will use one of the 14. And it is for this reason I repeatedly reminded you in the previous lesson to memorize and to conjugate yourself on a piece of paper. The more you practice, the easier this will become. So if I want to say in Arabic, he went, all I need to do is simply say dhahaba, he went. And that will be with any Madi verb. Dhahaba, he went. So I have my verb. Where is my doer? Okay, I got my fa'ilun from the 3 root letters. Where is my doer? I will say the doer is huwa. Fa'il is huwa mustatir. There is nothing there to indicate that is the doer. So that's how we will say it. And this is how, I know it's a bit laborious at this stage, but that's how precision you need to be in order to translate correctly, inshallah. If I want to say I went, this should be easy for you now. You should be able to tell me dhahabtu, I went. So again, I have my doer, my verb, fa'ilun, and I have my fa'il. In this case, I will say the fa'il is tu, ana, representing ana, but the actual doer is tu. And the ta at the end, which is highlighted in blue for you. If on the other hand, I want to say she went, I will say dhahabat. Dhahaba is my verb. Ta is not the doer. Okay, the doer is hidden here, mustatir. So every verb has a doer, whether it is hidden or it is expressed. And that's the only thing you need to know about the pronoun doers, inshallah ta'ala. And this is the point that you will note. So if I ask you who the doer is, dhahabat, you'll say here. But it's not a letter or anything. It's here, mustatir. It is hidden within the verb itself. The ta is a sign of feminine. So whenever we wish to express a sentence where we are saying a pronoun has done the action or is doing the action, he, she, you, I, it, they, we simply use these versions as I've already shown you. So let's go through it slowly. Dhahaba, I will say the doer is huwa, mustatir. And what is it? He went. And that's how I will translate it. Again, I repeat, sorry, forgive me for repeating again and again, but these things you need to get. The he will come first. Why? Because in English, the subject comes first. Then you have dhahabat. You'll say here is the doer, mustatir, there's nothing there, but here is the doer, and the translation will be she went. And if I see something like dhahabtum, you should be able to translate this yourself now. Who's the doer? Tum, meaning you all. So in English, I have to say you, and if I want to be precise, masculine plural went, because in English, there are 6 Arabic words which are you, representing 1 you in English. So you can see here that we have 3 sentences where we're expressing the doer only with the pronoun. Let's look at 3 more examples here where we're expressing the doer with a pronoun, so we don't need anything else. Dhahabu, again, it should be very easy for you to tell me that is the wow is the doer. They went, representing whom, of course. Dhahabti, you should be able to tell me the doer is ti, representing anti, you, feminine singular. And again, you can see why if we want to express in English the full details, we need a lot more information. Dhahabna, and again, this one should be easy, represent na, equivalent to nahnu. The doer is na. What is that? We went. So these 6 examples should be enough, inshallah, because we went through this in detail in lesson number 2. So all of the pronouns, whenever you want to express a sentence where the pronoun is the doer, you will choose one of the 14. So again, example of the verb nasara, all of the 14 you should have by now memorized. And nasara means he helped, or it can be also it, nasara, huma, etc. So if you learned lesson 2 well, the rest of our lessons will be relatively easy as far as precision in understanding which pronoun is doing or has done the work in this case. So again, please conjugate as many verbs as you can. I've gave you 3 examples. If you've done them, of course, this will be now, inshallah, beginning slowly to become second nature to you. So the external doer. The external doer is a noun or an ism, to be more precise, which comes after the verb, which is the doer of the action. It again, you should know this parrot fashion now, that the doer will be rafa. Rafa has to be. So doer has to be rafa. And examples of that you can see on the screen. The Hamid helped. So in Arabic, you'll have to express that with a noun. You cannot do it with a pronoun. Maryam helped. Again, you have to express it with an ism. You cannot do it with a pronoun. The teachers heard. Again, you'll have to do that with a noun coming after the verb, which is rafa. So the point to note here now is that if the doer coming after the verb is masculine, again, you remember the gender, only 2 types, masculine or feminine. So if the doer coming after the verb is masculine, then you have no option but to use Sighah number 1. So by that I mean, dhahaba, we did before, he went. Nasara, he helped. Alima, he knew. Karuma, he was noble. These are just a few examples of the verbs we've already done. Now, it does not matter whether the doer is definite or indefinite. It does not matter whether the doer is singular, dual, or plural. You will only use Sighah number 1 when it is masculine. Okay? Now, on the other hand, if the doer is feminine, and again, it does not matter whether it is definite, indefinite, singular, dual, or plural, you will only use Sighah number 4. So you will not change the verb depending on the number. You will only change the verb depending on the gender. Please note that. Depending on the gender. So this is the most important point to grasp, inshallah ta'ala, in verbal sentences. Whereas in Jumla Ismiya, you have to match the gender and the number. Here, it is the gender only that we are concerned with. So pay attention to the 2 examples I'm giving you, inshallah ta'ala. We have dhahaba, he went. Ilal madrasati, he went to the school. He went to the school. Who's the doer? He. There is no noun coming afterwards, as you can see, which is expressing the doer of the action. If I, on the other hand, said dhahaba hamidun ilal madrasati. Now, what we do, we translate the he first in English, because that's the one set within the dhahaba bit, but then we cross it off. Why? Because we have hamid afterwards, which is rafa. And that's the logic you follow, and you won't get confused. So if you see a ism after number 1 or number 4, you will delete the translation in your head. I don't need to say he anymore. So in English, I can't say he, Hamid, went to the school. It doesn't make much sense. So we will say Hamid went to the school. And that's the rule that you will follow, inshallah, for very simple translation. So normally, dhahaba you would have translated as he went. But because Hamidun is coming, it cancels the internal doer, cancels the pronoun, and you put Hamid at the front. So to explain the 2 points about the gender matching within the verb, what we do is Sami'a Hamidun. Hamid heard. Sami'a Hamidun. If I want to say that, of course, I got my verb, and I've also got my doer already, which is mustatir huwa. Because Hamid appears after, I will cross the huwa off. In my translation, I will simply say Hamid heard. So who's my doer? My doer is an external noun now, which is Hamidun. Again, in the feminine version, Nasarat. I cannot say Nasara here because the external doer is Maryam, which is feminine. So I have fa'ilun, and of course that's my verb. And where is my doer? Here. But because I see Maryamu afterwards, I will cancel the here in translation. And of course, the doer is expressed as an external noun now, which is Maryamu. And that's how easy it is, inshallah ta'ala, if you follow the steps that I've shared with you. So please note, the gender of the doer will dictate whether I use number 1 or number 4. So I got quite a few on the screen now. I'll go through this slowly, inshallah. Hopefully this will trigger your memory, and you'll be able to now use these examples. I do recommend strongly, even if I give you the slide, is not the issue, but you actually write this down by your own hand. And this is the only way it will stick in your head and your heart, inshallah ta'ala. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Qur'an, Alladhi allama bil qalam, the one who taught us by the use of pen. Otherwise, you're just watching, it will not go in. But if you actually get a book, notebook, a piece of paper, whatever it is, even a whiteboard, and you write the English and the Arabic, and you can then follow the steps I'm showing you, this will help it stick in your head. And there is no other way of learning something without practice. So first, again, the rules of learning is I listen, I forget, I see, I remember, I practice, I learn, I teach, I master. So when you practice this, the way I've laid it out for you, you can write it whichever way you like, as long as you're practicing. So again, Nasara, you simply translate as he helped. Nasara, he helped. But if I say Zaid helped, I would say Nasara Zaidun. I will now cross off the he and I will translate simply Zaid helped. A Muslim helped. A Muslim helped. So Nasara Muslimun. A Muslim helped. Okay, which is my doer? Muslimun. So I've separated them in the columns just to make things easy for you so you cannot miss the point, inshallah. The Muslim helped will be Nasara al-Muslimu. The Muslim helped. Okay, what is my doer? Al-Muslimu. Again, I'm ignoring he in the translation. The two Muslims helped. You should be able to work this out very easily, inshallah, before I give you the answer. We have Nasara al-Muslimani. Again, lesson number 3 and lesson number 4 in book 1. Muslimani, rafa, two Muslims. Who helped? The two Muslims helped. Again, I have al-Muslimani, has to be rafa. Then the Muslims helped. Again, this should be easy. I'm still using the singular version of the verb. Please note, Nasara al-Muslimuna. Nasara al-Muslimuna. And therefore, my doer is al-Muslimuna, which is plural, masculine, and it is the doer, al-fa'ilu. I hope these illustrated examples really highlight to the point that it does not matter whether it's definite or indefinite, singular, doer, or plural. You'll only use Sighah number 1. Only Sighah number 1 can have an external doer coming after masculine. Only Sighah number 4 can have a feminine doer coming after. That is the general rule. I will do all the variations shortly, inshallah, don't worry. But important that you understand this point, otherwise you will get confused. So that is the illustration, inshallah ta'ala, how verbal sentences work. So the opposite, now we're going to look at the feminine version. Where's the feminine doer? We have in the first line, Nasarat. If I see Nasarat on its own, I will just translate she helped. No need to worry about anything if I don't see a doer afterwards. Again, with only number 1 and number 4, we're looking for external doer. I want to say Fatima helped. This should be very easy. Nasarat Fatimatu. Again, you can see here, Fatimatu is my doer. So the opposite. Next, I want to say a Muslim, bracket female, helped. So again, we have Nasarat because it is feminine. Muslimatun, Muslim, a Muslim. And of course, the Muslimatun is my doer. I ignored the here version. Nasaratil muallimatu. The teacher, female teacher, helped. And I put this example just to illustrate to you what I've done here. And again, please note, this is Nasarat. So the opposite here. Why did I put T here? Because of al. I cannot read this with a sukun. I'll end up with two sukuns meeting, which is impossible in Arabic to read. And this is nothing to do with the rules of grammar. It is to do with the rules of reading. And therefore, the ta with sukun changes to a kasra. So the opposite to facilitate the reading when two sukuns come together. This has been covered in book 1, inshallah ta'ala, just in case you've forgotten. So I'll share that with you. So Nasarat and Nasarati is the same. Is because of the meeting of two sukuns. So here we have Nasaratil muallimatu, who helped. The teacher, female, helped. Definite here because of al. Then we have the two teachers. Again, we have Nasaratil muallimatani. The two teachers helped. I want to say the teachers, feminine, plural, 3 or more. Again, we have Nasaratil muallimatu. Al-Muallimatu. Again, if you go back to book 1, lesson number 3, lesson number 4, where I went through the duals and plurals and singulars, inshallah ta'ala. And I mentioned there, I'll repeat again for you, most of what you've learned, you're going to repeat again and again and again until it becomes second nature. So this is your singular, dual, and plural, definite, indefinite, feminine. I'm using Sighah number 4, which is the here version, nasarat. It will be the same for every other verb. If I wanted to put an external feminine doer, I will use nasarat, dhahabat, sami'at, alimat, what else? Karumat, etc., etc. So whichever verb I'm using, this is the rule for the feminine doer, or where the doer is feminine. In the previous slides, we dealt with the masculine doer and the feminine doer. Gone. But there are some exceptions you should be aware of. They're not really exceptions. There is a very important rule in Arabic which causes a lot of confusion to English-speaking students. I'm sure it does to others, but it's basically the principle that non-rational plurals in Arabic are treated as feminine. And that has been covered in book 1 with the jumla ismiya and the descriptive phrase, etc., where we looked at it in some detail. It applies throughout the language, including with verbs. So here I have jamalun. Jamalun means a camel, male camel. So if I wanted to say a camel sat, I would say jalasa jamalun. Very easy. 2 camels sat, jalasa jamalani. Again, we are following our rules. There's no variation. But on the other hand, if I want to say 3 or more camels sat, camels are what? Non-rationals. Okay, they're plural now. The word for camels in plural is jimal. And non-rational meaning it is not human, jinn, or angel. So camel, of course, it does not fall into these 3 categories. So I will have to treat it as feminine. Here I will say jalasat jimalun. Jalasat jimalun. And you can see that is the doer. Of course, if I put al, meaning the camels sat, I would say jalasatil jimalu. Jalasatil jimalu. Again, I'm using the singular feminine. I'm using the feminine version of the verb, even though the one doing the act is masculine, because it is a non-rational plural. It is a rule in the Arabic language. Non-rational plurals are treated as feminine. Does not matter what they are originally. And non-rationals, again, I repeat, are which are not human, jinn, or angels. That's a general rule. So the word for feminine or female camel is naqah, naqatun. Now I want to say a female camel sat. I'm following the rule. I'm using the feminine sighah number 4. Sighah number 4. Jalasat. Jalasat naqatun. If I want to say 2 female camels sat, again, naqatani. Jalasat naqatani, which you can see. If I want to say nuqun, which is the plural of female camels, again, rule still applying. Jalasat nuqun. Nuqun. So doesn't matter whether male or female, you will treat it, broken plural of non-rational beings will be treated as feminine. You can see that here applying. And then, of course, if I had al afterwards, it will be jalasatin nuqu. Jalasatin nuqu. So again, anuq meaning the female camels. I hope this is making sense. It's a repetition of what we've already done, but it needs to be highlighted because you're going to see it again and again in Quranic and Hadith text. 4 occasions where either Sighah 1, scale fa'ala, or Sighah 4, fa'alat can be used. There are 4 occasions where you have the option of either using Sighah 1, for example, fa'ala, or fa'alat Sighah 4. You can use either. And these sometimes throw you off, but if you remember the general idea that you can use either of, you'll be fine because you don't have to reproduce the language, but just when you see it. I'll give you the 4 occasions. Just make a note of them, inshallah ta'ala, as they will prove to be of benefit, inshallah. Now we have the doer being number 1, being the doer is a rational, rational broken plural. So aqil, that is human broken plural. So for example, ذهب الرجل, the man went. The man went. If I want to say the man went, of course I can follow the rule and I can say ذهب الرجال. Rijal is being the plural of rajul. And rijalu, ar-rijalu will be the doer here, plural. It's broken, masculine, but it's rational, it's broken. So we're using the standard rule. However, I can also use the feminine here. I can say ذهبت الرجال. ذهبت الرجال. الرجال. Again, you can see Again, don't let these things confuse you. Just be aware that that's how the language works. That when it is for broken plural, you have the option of using both if it is rational. If it's not rational, as with the previous example, you follow the standard rule. So women entered, the women entered. So far we did the men. So what would happen? I can say dakhala, dakhala meaning enter, an-nisa'u, dakhala an-nisa'u, the women entered. Again, I'm using a strange rule here, feminine plural, I'm using the masculine verb. I can also use the feminine verb here. Dakhalatin nisa'u, an-nisa'u, the women entered. Now you're going to get yourself into a big mess if you start saying why and what are the rules and sub-rules. There's so many things to learn. But if you just accept that that's what happens, you'll be fine. Inshallah ta'ala, as you see more and more examples, we do not need to go to advanced here. We just need to be aware that this happens. So in language, remember, our job is to translate from Arabic to English. We will see these things, and that is why I am sharing them with you. And it is more of a comprehensive lesson where all the points are covered. And when we see examples, I can point you back and say, please refer to that. And inshallah ta'ala, if you've got the notes or whatever, you can always refer back to it. The second occasion where I can use either of them is when it comes to collective nouns. Again, we did collective nouns back in lesson number 4, where I mentioned it briefly. And of course, further down, we also mentioned it. So the nation went. The nation is a masculine word. ذهب القوم. القوم. I can also say ذهبت القوم. ذهبت القوم. Even though it is masculine, I'm treating it as feminine as per the rule above. So if the doer is a collective noun, I can use both, or both has been used in the language. And I think we saw some examples of it in book 1 also. So al-qawmu, masculine, but I'm using dhahabat. The third occasion where we can use either Sighah 1 or Sighah 4 is when the doer is non-real feminine. What do I mean by that? That's been covered in lesson number 3 in book 1. What is meant by that is something treated in the language as feminine, but biologically it is not feminine. For example, the sun is feminine in Arabic, but it's not biological. It's not, in English, we wouldn't use she with it or he with it. It will be it. So, طَلَعَ الشَّمْسُ, طَلَعَ means to rise. And of course, it's the past tense. You can recognize it. فَعَالَ, ذَهَابَ, نَاصَرَ. So it is a verb. طَلَعَ الشَّمْسُ, the sun rose. I can use the masculine version here. I can also use the feminine version. Exactly the same translation in English. طَلَعَتِ الشَّمْسُ, طَلَعَتِ الشَّمْسُ. So this is your third occasion. The fourth occasion, when we got the option of using either Sighah number 1 or Sighah number 4, is when the doer is real feminine, but something comes in between the verb and the doer, anything else. And as I said, mentioned many times, in Arabic, there's flexibility. And this flexibility gives you nuanced differences. So here I have the feminine, because Khadija is feminine. Khadija studied today. If I said Khadija studied today and I had the word yawma, al-yawma at the end, I couldn't do this. So here I've got it in the middle. So I got the option of using number 4, which is darasati, as it should be, al-yawma Khadijatu. Khadija studied today. I can also now, because there is something between the doer and the verb, I can also use darasa al-yawma Khadijatu. Darasa al-yawma Khadijatu. So Khadijatu is the doer. Again, there is a separation with al-yawma coming in between. So that gives me the flexibility. All of this might sound a lot to remember, but really, look, your job and my job is not to really know all the rules. Just need to know how to apply them and understand them and translate. So if you just remember, there's possibility. And of course, plurals in Arabic can be quite confusing at the beginning. Once you see it once, twice, 3, 4, 5 times, that's what's happening. You'll remember it forever. And the same thing happened. I tried to remember lots of Arabic grammar rules and I was just failing for years and years. Alhamdulillah, when one of the teachers just said, relax, just let's apply and let's look at some surahs of Qur'an. And slowly, inshallah ta'ala, all of this became second nature. So again, it's all to do with practice. At the moment, please don't worry about the reasoning and don't ask kindly a detailed question about reasoning, because sometimes to type pages of text in feedback is not possible. But by all means, be aware of these 4. And I'm really trying to make this lesson comprehensive so we don't have to go back to it again in terms of relearning everything. Just mention it. And then when I go back, I said, I did mention it to you that these are the 4 occasions, or I did mention it to you that broken plurals are treated this way. Rational plurals are treated that way. Non-rational plurals can also be treated this way, etc., etc. And that's all the idea you need to have. The rest is just simple application, practice, and inshallah, through practice, you will master. So alhamdulillah, I've got a very good overview of the doer as the pronoun and all the variations of the doer as a noun coming after, which is in rafa. That's the rule that's been followed all the way through. Yes, we did the variations at the end, but those are the 2 points that you need to remember very well. And a lot of you requested it's quite confusing on the video which lesson they're watching. So I, inshallah, try to remember, I put this at the bottom. So I'll try to copy that across all the way so that you can have a clarity which lesson you're following. Because in YouTube, I believe the lesson gets not in the same order, but the playlist, inshallah, I'll try to maintain. So I've done that from your feedback. But if there's anything else I can do to improve, do let me know, inshallah. And of course, if you find any mistakes, kindly inform me and I'll try to correct them. After all, human work is full of mistakes and errors. May Allah accept our good deeds and forgive our mistakes. So alhamdulillah, I'm going to conclude the video now. We have already covered the verbal sentence. We looked at the doer, the 2 types in detail. Next video, inshallah, I'm going to cover these 3 points in some detail. So fear of making this one too long, we'll conclude here. In part 2, inshallah ta'ala, we will continue with this lesson and complete it bi'idhnillah. So may Allah bless you for watching the lesson and all your feedback. And I'm really heartfelt grateful to the brothers and sisters for all your du'as and your support, without which, of course, to find the motivation and the energy required, I believe your du'as are helping me. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept your du'as from you, from your heart. And I make dua for every single one of you. I make dua for the ummah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unites us and keeps us together. And all of us, inshallah ta'ala, myself first, may Allah grant us tawfiq to make tawbah, to return back to Him and seek His forgiveness and His mercy through serving this ummah. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you from the depth of my heart. I am trying my level best to continue to increase the resources and the quality of the lessons. And I will continue to do so based on your feedback and your support, inshallah ta'ala. Kindly remember me in your du'as. And may again, please kindly remember to share and like and whatever else you need to do. I'm not that familiar with how the technology is working. But do that, inshallah ta'ala, to encourage as many people as possible to learn Arabic, to understand Qur'an, and Allah give me tawfiq to complete the whole series. Jazakumullahu khairan. We have ended the lesson 3 part 1. I shall see you in the next video. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep you safe. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you, your family, your loved ones with the very best in this world and the hereafter. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala come to the aid of our Muslim brothers and sisters throughout the world. Until the next video, kindly remember me in your du'as. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.